Hey everyone! So the other day I was watching Google I/O. It's their annual presentation thing where they show off all their cool new products and cool new innovations. And honestly, I thought it was pretty awesome. For example, they were showing this new development in their self-driving car project.
And one skill we started to tackle is self-driving in difficult weather, such as snow, as you see here. Driving in a snowstorm can be tough because snowflakes can create a lot of noise for our sensors. This is what our car sees before we apply any filtering. But when we apply machine learning to this data, this is what our car sees. We can clearly identify each of these vehicles, even through all of the sensor noise.
Alright, I don't know what you thought, but I thought it was pretty cool. And then they showed off a new feature in Google Assistant, which is sort of like Siri, but it's made by Google. And with this new feature, you can tell Google Assistant things like, make me a haircut appointment on Tuesday between 10 and noon. And then Google Assistant will make that call for you to make that appointment. Let me show that call to you just in case you haven't seen it yet. So what you're gonna see on the left-hand side is gonna be Google Assistant actually making a call for you. And it's kind of funny and it's gonna sound like a human, but it's really not. It's just a robot. It's just an AI. And on the right-hand side, you're gonna see the hair salon's receptionist that it's talking to.
So how can I help you?
Hi, I'm calling to book a women's haircut for a client. I'm looking for something on May 3rd.
Sure, give me 1 second. Sure, what time are you looking for around?
At 12 p.m.
We do not have a 12 p.m. available. The closest we have to that is a 1:15.
Do you have anything between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.?
Depending on what service she would like. What service is she looking for?
Just a woman's haircut for now.
Okay, we have a 10 o'clock.
10 a.m. is fine.
Okay, what's her first name?
The first name is Lisa.
Okay, perfect. So I will see Lisa at 10 o'clock on May 3rd.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Great. Have a great day. Bye.
Okay, it's pretty cool, right? And I was genuinely impressed by these things, and it kind of got me thinking, why is it that Google is so smart they can make these super sophisticated AI systems, but somehow they still can't fix YouTube? Okay, let me back up here a little bit and say that I'm actually a huge fan of YouTube. For one thing, I love watching other people's YouTube videos, and for another, I'm actually a full-time YouTuber. So I have this other channel called CS Dojo where I teach programming and computer science concepts, and that's basically how I make my living. So I really enjoy using YouTube both as a regular user and as someone who creates content on the platform. But it's just that recently, a lot of things YouTube has been doing are pretty worrisome to me. So I'm just going to give you a few examples here. First of all, YouTube Red. Just in case you don't know, it's a premium subscription service YouTube has, and it's great, but the thing is, it doesn't work in Canada where I live. Actually, because of this, YouTube kind of got worse for me. So on my phone, I used to be able to, play videos in the background. So I used to be able to do things like lock my phone and then still keep listening to music I was listening to on YouTube, but I can't do that anymore. And that's probably partly because of YouTube Red, because right now the only way to listen to videos or music on YouTube in the background on your phone is by subscribing to YouTube Red. And there's just no way for me to do it. Like, I wouldn't mind paying $10 or $15 or whatever for that particular feature, but I can't do it because I live in Canada. And actually YouTube Red only works in 5 countries right now, which is kind of crazy to me. So I understand that legal issues can be sometimes hard, but the thing is, companies like Spotify, were able to figure out how to quickly expand to many countries, including Canada, and they did it with their, both free and premium services. So why can't YouTube Red just do the same thing? I mean, they have so many resources, right? Anyway, the second big issue I see with YouTube is their commenting system. I've seen my fair share of bad comments on YouTube, and I guess it's actually kind of known for it too. But I found that in general, the top level comments are usually not that bad. So just as an example, I made this video about Snapchat, how its new update is really bad in January. And then I got a bunch of comments here, And if you look at the top level comments, they're not that bad because, you only see comments that are liked by a lot of other people. So if you look at, for example, this one says, I stopped using Snapchat since the update, it's terrible. I even ended my really long streak that was like 600 plus days. And it's a reasonable comment, and it got a lot of likes from other people too. But the thing is, when you look at the comments of comments, it's a totally different story. For example, if you look at replies to this one right away says, Ryan, dumb bass, I guess. And then this one says, Cry me a river, I don't know what that means. And then this one's like, no, you're dumbass, go, I don't want to even read it. So the top level comments are okay, but if you look at the comments of comments, the second level comments, they can be really bad because they're just ordered by time and not by popularity. And a solution to this problem seems pretty simple to me. They can just make it more like Reddit so that people can, make comments on a comment on a comment, and each level of comments can be ordered by popularity instead of time. Okay, and the third big issue I see with YouTube is their obsessive focus on this thing called watch time. So watch time is basically the total amount of time people spend on each video, and YouTube seems to care a lot about that. I would say too much. So to explain that, let me show you one example here. So what we're looking at here is a video from CNET, and this one is also about Google Assistant and its smart feature that talks to people. And if you look at the number of likes and dislikes on this video, it's really bad. It got 5,000 likes and 5,000 dislike, and this ratio is like really bad compared to other videos especially. So what probably happened is people watch this video, and then a lot of people watched even a majority of the video or even the whole thing, and they said, this is just pure garbage, and then disliked it. But YouTube probably actually said, wow, a lot of people are spending a lot of time on this, a lot of watch time, and they started recommending it to even more people. And that's why this video got so many views, more than 200,000 views. And this strategy of recommending videos just because they get a lot of watch time is pretty bad, because that means sometimes YouTube ends up recommending, total garbage content to even more people. So there are a few other major issues with YouTube, like how it was getting harder and harder to monetize YouTube videos. But in general, it's just that YouTube people don't seem to be in touch with the users or the content creators like me. And it seems like this is not just my opinion either. A lot of people are frustrated with how YouTube handles a lot of different things, and those people include some big YouTubers like Casey Neistat and Philip DeFranco too. And then I was thinking, these things seem relatively simple to fix, like fixing the commenting system and making YouTube Red work in Canada. I mean, they're not the easiest problems, but they seem, at least simpler than things like making cars drive themselves and making machines that talk like humans. So why haven't they fixed them yet? And then over time, I realized it's not just the problem with YouTube. A few other Google products seem to share the same kind of issue where they're not really, in touch with the users. So for example, I used to have, this phone, Pixel by Google, and it's a good phone, but the thing is, GPS on this thing just doesn't work. Like, it shows the correct location roughly, but the orientation is just all over. I might be facing, north, for example, but this might say I'm facing east. And Google Drive. Like, I like using Google Drive for so many different things, but this one time I was trying to, set up offline syncing on my Mac laptop, but it just didn't work. So I needed to switch to Dropbox even though I didn't really want to. And I guess another example would be Google+. Oh wait, what's Google+ again? Anyway, my point is, why is it that Google is so smart that they can make these super smart, super sophisticated AI systems work, but somehow they still can't make these seemingly simpler things work, like GPS? So over time, I realized that it's partly because of the company culture, that's really focused on their engineers, and partly because of how employees there are not necessarily incentivized to listen to users. So let me just quickly explain their company culture first. Their company culture is really focused on solving technically challenging problems. And it sort of makes sense because, it was started by two PhD Stanford students, and they became successful initially because they were able to solve this technically challenging problem of improving the search quality. So that's definitely their strength in a way, to be able to focus on technical problems. But I guess the flip side of that is that listening to users is not necessarily their strength. And through some observation and research, I realized how the company culture there directly translates to how employees are incentivized to do certain things there. And what I'm going to share today is going to be partly the result of the research I've done, online and by talking to some of my friends who work at Google, and partly the result of my personal experience working at Google. So I was working there for about 1 year before I started working as a full-time YouTuber. But of course, I won't be able to share any confidential information that I learned while I was working there. Okay, so Google employees are incentivized through a few different things, but one big focus there is on promotion. And one thing that goes into promotion is how technically challenging your project is. Basically, the rule of thumb is the more technically challenging your project is, the more likely you are to be promoted. So one example would be, let's say you're working at Google, and if you decide to build a feature in Gmail that predicts, what people are going to type in Gmail, that's probably better than fixing YouTube's commenting system. Because fixing YouTube's commenting system is not that challenging, technically speaking, but predicting what people are going to type is much harder, and it requires, AI and machine learning too. And actually, this explains a lot of things I talked about earlier. So for example, it's like, instead of fixing the GPS on the Pixel phone, why not just create a super smart AI that can talk to people? You're probably more likely to be promoted that way anyway. And here, I'm not saying that solving technically challenging problems is bad. I'm just saying that their balance of, solving something that's hard versus listening to users is just a little bit off. Okay, so once we understand this strange incentive structure that exists at Google, what can we do about it? You might say, if you see someone who's working at Google, just have them fix it, and then it's gonna be fine. But I don't think it's gonna happen. And that's partly because the strategy of focusing on, technically challenging problems has been working for them. It allowed them to create Google Search in the first place, and Google Chrome, and self-driving cars, and this AI thing that can talk to people. So for them, it's like, hey, it's been working just fine for the past 20 years. So why would I fix it? So actually, I think a better question here is, what can the rest of us learn if we don't work at Google? And there are two takeaways that I personally took from this. First of all, I think it gives a lot of hope to small startups and entrepreneurs. So, as someone who's running a YouTube channel full time, I sometimes feel like I'm a little startup. I'm just one person, I don't have a lot of money, I don't have a lot of resources. And I feel like if Google decided to make their own, programming educational YouTube channel, and if they decided to compete with me, I'd be go out of business in 6 months. But at the same time, I know that they don't have a lot of will to go into that business because it's not a technically challenging problem to solve. And I think it's sort of the same thing for a lot of startups too. So if you're running a startup, and if you really focus on listening to users and making something that people want, that could be a huge advantage over not just Google, but other big companies too, like Facebook, Amazon, and Microsoft. A good example of that is actually this company called Slack. So just in case you're not familiar with it, Slack is sort of like Skype for internal communications within the company. And when Slack started, companies like Google and Microsoft had a huge advantage over them because Skype was already popular for internal communications within the company, and Google Hangout was popular for that too. And Slack was able to become really successful despite that because they listened to users, and made something that people wanted instead of just focusing on technically challenging problems. Okay, so that's the first thing I took away from this whole analysis, the fact that it gives a lot of hopes to small startups. And the second thing is that if you're not an entrepreneur, if you're not interested in starting a startup yourself, but if you still want to work in tech, you actually don't necessarily have to work at one of these big companies like Microsoft and Google to have a really good career. You could work at companies like Slack, and as long as the company you're working at listens to users and keeps making something that people want, they'll probably become successful, and you'll probably have a really good career there too. Alright, the last thing I wanted to reiterate before closing this video is the fact that I still love using YouTube both as a user and as a creator. And part of the reason I wanted to make this video is because I really don't want YouTube to fail, you know? I think it'd be such a shame if they lost to companies like Facebook. So actually, if you're, working at YouTube, and this might sound kind of funny, but if there's anything I might be able to help for creating better experience for the users or for the creators, just let me know. Maybe you can just email me here and I'd be happy to help if there's anything. Okay, hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But usually I don't make a lot of videos on this channel, so maybe I'll see you on my other channel. Anyway, thanks for watching.